What's up, Bone Ponies? This is Cody from Tabletop Totality, and I'm here with my boys.
Neil.
Steve.
Welcome to the Bone Pony Ranch. We are going to be talking about the importance of, and maybe explaining a little bit about backgrounds and classes in D&D and other TTRPGs.
Yeah.
Yep.
What do you boyos think about backgrounds? I guess we'll start with that aspect first.
I think sometimes people lose sight of the importance of picking a good background. So like for Dungeons and Dragons, there is already pre-generated stuff. Most tabletop RPGs already have pre-generated stuff, and sometimes those don't fit, and I feel like that's usually when you lose sight of it. But you can still make your own backgrounds. You can still figure out with you and your overlord how they work, and I think it's crucial to the pairing of your class.
Yeah, I think that it was a cool inclusion that was introduced in 5th edition, where they provided these little backgrounds because it helps you kind of define your character when you're first starting out about like what kind of a person they are and like where they come from, what they did. Like basically, it's basically a class before you have a class. Almost.
Yeah.
It's kind of like this is like who your character was before they became an adventurer and before they started taking class levels and things of that nature.
Even mechanically as well. I mean, not to cut you off, but just to add to it is that even mechanically, because the backgrounds in 5th edition specifically provide you with extra skills, sometimes equipment, and then like usually some sort of like something that you can do specifically.
Yeah.
I know like there's one like you're able to know where like you might not know the information at hand that is being asked of you, but because of your time as a researcher, you're able to know where you could find this information.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's something specific to that background.
Yeah, and it also helps with like starting equipment, like because sometimes that's kind of a questionable thing of like, oh, like why, like what starting equipment do I have? How much money do I start with? And it's like, well, if you have a background, that usually starts you off with some kind of a weapon, maybe a couple of little items and some armor, maybe a little bit of money. And it gives you it gives your character a little bit of extra customization and like Neil was saying, it you can customize your background to basically make it whatever it is that you want. So like that's one further way of just making a character what you want them to be and not necessarily needing to correspond with what's in the book as written, but
exactly,
it's sort of just there. Like the stuff that's in the book as written is just sort of there as a guideline. Like you can even modify, the stuff that's written there and change one of the skills that you get proficiency in, or change, gear or whatever it is, as long as your, overlord approves it.
Yep.
You can adjust it and make it fit the character that you want to make. If that's good, if you have an idea in mind, but like the background doesn't fit them, you can sort of modify it to fit them a little bit easier than you can with a class.
Especially. And I find like a lot of the time if there's class features that get so like if you're doing a class that's in a different book than most of the backgrounds are, because the focus from Wizards of the Coast, speaking of D&D, is more classes. They're always gonna give you more classes. They're gonna give you more races, and they may there's a cool background here that you can take. But they're not gonna give you a lot of backgrounds because that's something I feel the way it's written is, well, we gave you starting blocks. We talk about how you can do it, adapt it to what you want to do in your games, in your settings and stuff like that, because like even all like a couple of the pre-mades have their own backgrounds for them, because like Strahd has one where somebody's more touched to see spirits and stuff of that, to do horror elements, which is really cool to work
the haunted
with.
background,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's really cool to do, but those backgrounds really should be something that creates your backstory. And that's why I think one of the cool things 5e did is they gave you role tables. So they go, oh, here's your, your ideals, your beliefs, what's a flaw for yourself. And if you come from this background, well, here's some things that would make sense for somebody who's already in this background. So you can then build off of that. And there's no need, you couldn't do that in reverse. If you had a story that you have this backstory and this is what I want to do, and you're like, well, nothing really works background wise in this book, go to your overlord and be like, well, here's my backstory. What do you think would be a skill I could learn from this? What do you think would be something I would get from this type of backstory to make my background? I think me and you did that, Cody, actually, for Toleraxia, the long running campaign that we play, for my
Yeah.
paladin.
Yeah, and that's because what's the sense? I mean, I feel anyway. What's the sense of trying to shove a square peg in a round hole?
Yeah.
Like if it's not going to work, or if it's not exactly what you're thinking about, this is one instance where Wizards and D&D specifically is encouraging you to make this your own. To make something of your own, to not just I think, Neil, you put it correctly, where this is a starting block and you can go from there. This is examples of what backgrounds could be.
Yeah.
So we touched on backgrounds a little bit, but I was thinking we should probably talk about, like, what's the difference. Maybe people that are brand new to 5th edition don't necessarily quite comprehend what the purpose of a background is, specifically, mechanically, what's the point of them. And I think that a good way to think about that is that um, backgrounds can kind of either be singular, they can be like the haunted, where you had something happen specifically to your character that has led you to do this, to be this type of a person. I think it's the same with the folk hero. It's like you saved your village.
Yep.
You're somewhat renowned where you're from, and it's because of something you did. And it's a singular thing. Or it can be long term, like you were a student, you were an acolyte at a temple.
Yep.
Whereas I think, like, your classes are more, that's more like your occupation, your profession, the path you're choosing to take as you move forward. Whereas your background obviously would be, your past.
Yeah. No, and I think that's
I would think that it's your background could also be your profession. It could be related to your job. I think that the difference is that
absolutely.
I think that the difference is that, like, while your profession is like both your background and your job, your class is your job as an adventurer specifically. It's what you're utilizing in your adventures, the skills that you're using in your adventures to progress in them. And also, it's like the bigger difference mechanically is that your background doesn't grow, but your class does. Your class levels up, your background stays the same.
And they don't have to be correlated.
No, not at all.
Your background and your class do not have to gel with one another.
Yeah, in fact,
ideally, if you're trying to maximize your character mechanically, then you could sit there and say, well, I'm going to take this specific background because it gives me access to classes that don't, not classes, but skills that I would get from my class. Or things that I don't get from my class. But you don't have to do that at all. I mean, your background can be completely unrelated. And I think that making your own backgrounds with your overlord, your DM, is a good way to ensure that it's not just some like a throwaway aspect of the game where it's just like, it's just something I had to pick, but it's not really relevant to my what I'm playing.
Yeah, and like you could give yourself a background. Like I would say that giving yourself a background that doesn't really have anything to do with your class is actually kind of beneficial, because it gives you proficiencies and stats or in skills that you might not get. Like if you were to be like, if you're playing like
fills in some gaps.
Yeah, if you were playing like a monk or a fighter or something, you could be like, well, I'm going to take the charlatan background because they get bonuses to deception and persuasion, I believe, and I don't think you get those as proficiencies for like any sort of like martial classes. So you could use that to fill in, like, if you know that you're going to be playing with an overlord who, is very into like talking things out and
Yeah.
being and like needing to deceive people, then maybe you might want to take something like that. Or like the other way where it's like you want to take a more physical background if you're going to be playing a more intellectual character class just to get those proficiencies. Like
Hmm.
that could work as well.
Well, I would also state, like, we kind of talk about the difference between, the background and classes. Your background is more of an RP. Yes, there is a couple mechanical things that build into it. But it is more RP based. It is, well, this is kind of what based my character to what they are today. And
Mhm.
now my class is what's gonna develop them further, what the future is going to look like, what they're going to be a part of. Technically they could be this whole background of a big evil person, you know what I mean, where maybe they stole, killed, murdered, but now they're on the path of self-righteousness and becoming better, you know what I mean. um it's so there's the options there. And then I would like to mention, like, even other tabletop RPGs. So we play Symbaroum, Call of Cthulhu. They also implement this in a different way, um, where your background is pretty much just the stuff, a couple of abilities here and there, but instead of class, sometimes they'll talk about occupation. And occupation is the path that you're now taking forward. This is what you do for your life. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
that's a much bigger deal in, like you mentioned, Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Especially what we played like in seventh edition.
Hmm. In
That's
Pulp
pretty much what you
Cthulhu and
are.
everything. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so even for other tabletop RPGs, it is still a big thing. I think it's good to have, because that background aspect builds your RP, and then your class, occupation, whatever it be, is going to be that path that you're moving down. It's the spot where you're gonna, all right, my pawn's here. Well, now I took a step forward, and it's going to be those step forward, those, whatever it be, climbing that ladder, going down that stairs, whatever analogy you want to use, to of progression. um and that's what your class is going to be, your occupation, whatever it happens to be called in your tabletop RPG, at least in my eyes,
yeah,
setting.
and I think I would like to add that your story should define your background,
Hmm.
not really like the other way around. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
you shouldn't feel pigeonholed, like that you have to just pick what's there and then shape your character based on what's there. It's
Correct.
the other way around.
Yeah.
You should make your story, and as long as you and the person who's running your game, the overlord, is okay with it and everybody at the table is okay with what you're going to do, like, then start making things that reflect who the character
Correct.
is, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean, because like I said before, the background is like, obviously it's like it's the past, so it's something that defines part of that character's past, and like you were saying, Neil, is the class is more the progression of who they're going to be.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's just a good way to look at it. It's how a lot of the time I even look at it. And it's really nice because a lot of these games now do have that aspect of, well, we're gonna help you cultivate a backstory.
Mhm.
Where, like, in a lot of tabletop RPGs prior, the focus was your class. It
Yeah.
didn't matter about anything else. Throw all that out the window, or if you played with it, then you could still add it in. But now I feel like they're trying to find a better way to tie it in, to
Yeah.
make it so it's in the game. So RP is an actual thing that exists in this game, which, congrats, definitely keep moving forward in that mind, as any designer should, I believe, move forward into that, because at the table it's just going to be so much better. Just
Yeah.
all
Yeah,
in all,
in that aspect of it, yeah, it's
proves it
absolutely
all.
a fantastic tool for backstory writing and character building and things of that nature that like kind of weren't there before, to help newer players sort of have an idea, like even like a person who has never picked up a game before can put a background down and say, "Oh, I'm going to make my character a sailor." And now I know something about my character. He's a sailor, so now I can
Well,
use
and
that
then,
background to
yeah,
developed the whole character basically around his background as a sailor, and
And I'm
that's kind
all
of why it's
about
there.
those random rolling tables. I think
Hmm.
you guys know this.
Yeah.
That a lot of times when I'm going to create like a character, if I don't, if I don't have something in mind, or even if I do, I end up rolling on these tables. I still do it to this day. I'll roll on these tables, and okay, I see where that's going, but all right, that's the path for this. That's the path for this. That's the path for this, and then
Mm.
I just develop them further. So you could take it at what it is, or you could be like, oh, okay, that's a cool idea. Let me think, let me think, let me think. This is how I can actually interpret this idea to what I want this character to be. So
Hmm.
for me, it's that quick burst of inspiration. It's the all right, this is that spark that starts my engine. You know what you know
Well,
what I mean?
it's almost like writing prompts, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a good starting point for you to take off from, you know, and
Yep.
that's actually something I feel like we should mention because we're getting ready to actually publish our This Down adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Is something we've been working on recently is some random tables for you up in This
I
Down.
love random tables.
So there's can be all sorts of random happenings and events and things like that as you go through the city.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, I feel like we should mention. Sorry, Neil, but
You could.
uh, there is a big sale on Drive Through RPG this whole month for anything that's D&D related.
Mm-hmm.
So any of our titles that are that you have to pay for that are not free, which is the minority of our titles,
Yeah.
um, you can get them now at a good discount rate, and it's for the whole month. So
Yeah. It's definitely something willing to look into.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. 100%.
So, yeah. So if you have a background in being thrifty, jump into those.
That's good.
jump into some savings.
That's
yeah,
good.
yeah, there you
That's
go.
good,
There
Steve.
you go.
I'll try. I gotta try sometimes.
Yeah. Well, hopefully our discussion gave you some ideas about how to use backgrounds and really kind of what the difference between backgrounds and classes are. And from a storytelling point of view, I think that's kind of how we always try to lean in that direction. We're about the
Yeah.
RP,
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
less about the numbers, more about the RP. That's
Hmm.
what you get here at the old Bone Boney Ranch.
Yep.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's definitely there's multiple ways you can, skin that cat, as some may say. But let us know what your take is in the corral below. Let's get these stables hip hopping with a bunch of comments and or sorry, trotting with a bunch of comments.
There it is. There
Um
it is.
and give us your opinion on if you think backgrounds are important, if you think it's just the class focus. If I'd be very interested if somebody goes, no, backgrounds are way more important than classes. So
Yeah.
hit me with that. I would like to see that take. I
Blame
think it would
that.
be pretty interesting. I'll brush that pony.
Indeed.
But
Oh,
definitely make sure as we're wrapping up here, check out our drive through RPG, go to our website, check out some of our content. There's a bunch of adventures, a bunch of races. We got some, classes out there. We have a Patreon that you can subscribe to. That if you subscribe to one of the tiers, we actually try and gift tabletop RPG
gear.
gear, um
Yeah, we try
books,
if we find groups
dice.
that could need a
Yeah.
hand getting some equipment for the hobby, some dice, some starter kits, things like that. We send them,
Yeah.
and we've done it a handful of times, and we'd like to keep doing it. So there is a tier on our Patreon for Kurgan's care packages, and a
Hmm.
portion of that tier goes towards funding that.
I want to say it's
Uh,
half the tier. So we,
it
we
is
ask
half the tier.
$10, $5 goes to funding a package to go to either a Boys and Girls Club, an after school
Right.
D&D group. There, maybe
Yeah.
some less fortunate individuals who all want to get together and play some form of tabletop RPG. that's the type of people you would be impacting. And we try and vet them so this way it's not just, oh, my cousin Timmy really wants this stuff and I could
Yeah,
get it
yeah.
for
Buy
him,
me,
but
buy
can
me
you
a
get
free
it?
book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
we're
yeah.
not giving it to those people. But and then on top of that, if you know of any groups that are doing this that you would like to try and get something to pass that information on to us, through our social media, our email, whatever it may be, and we'll try and help them out as best we can, even if it's just sending some of our own stuff. We like to do that as well.
Absolutely.
Yep, I think that'll wrap it up for us today here at
Yep.
the old BP.
Yep. The old
Yeah.
BPR.
Yeah,
Yeah.
BPR.
That's very interesting. I think we could get a beer out of that here.
Could you imagine if Pap sponsored me? That'd be amazing.
Just not the business, just you.
Yeah, just
just
me. Just me.
just Cody.
It's
But,
all about me.
But I think that's it for us, folks. I hope you have a good night and or day or evening, whatever time you're watching this, because it could be any time.
Wherever you are, whenever you are,
Just have
whoever
it good.
you are, just be good always.
Always.
And if you can't be good, be quiet.
Ugh.
Get rich.